Did you know that Active Directory is exploited in 9 out of 10 cyber attacks? With access to Active Directory, attackers can gain control of your network. To keep attackers out, you need to find and fix Active Directory security gaps. Meet Purple Knight, a free security assessment tool that scans your environment for hundreds of vulnerabilities and helps you fix the problems. Ready to reduce your Active Directory attack surface? Download Purple Knight, the #1 Active Directory security vulnerability assessment tool. Visit securityweekly.com/Sempiris. Why is identity resilience a top priority for security executives? Because your identity access management, or IAM system, is critical to your business. Whether you use Okta, Microsoft Entra, or another IDP, if your IAM is attacked, your operations can go down for hours or days, directly impacting your bottom line. So what's your backup plan? Mighty ID is here to save the day, reinforcing your IAM resilience. With flexible backup and recovery, and even migration between IDPs, Mighty ID keeps business running when failure is not an option. Check out Mighty ID at securityweekly.com/Mighty ID for more. Panoptica, Cisco's cloud application security solution, provides end-to-end lifecycle protection for cloud-native application environments. It empowers organizations to safeguard their APIs, serverless functions, containers, and Kubernetes environments. Panoptica ensures comprehensive cloud security, compliance, and monitoring at scale, offering deep visibility, contextual risk assessments, and actionable remediation insights for all your cloud assets. Get more information at securityweekly.com/Panoptica.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. Some quick announcements here, and we'll launch into part 2 of our conversation with Ross Haleliuk. Security Weekly listeners can save $100 on our RSA Conference 2024 full conference pass. RSA Conference will take place May 6th through May 9th in San Francisco and on demand. I think that is just 1 month away, a little less than 1 month away. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC24 and use the code 54USECweekly. So 54USECweekly. We hope to see you there. Also, Google has announced that they will be shutting down the Google Podcast platform in mid-2024. We were all shocked. Google never shuts things down. To ensure that you don't lose access to the Security Weekly content you know and love, please make sure you subscribe to your favorite podcast feeds on an alternative platform. Pretty much anything you might be using, from Apple Podcasts to Spotify, we're probably on there. We've got links to a bunch of them over at securityweekly.com/subscribe, and get the buttons there to subscribe to each show and make it super easy for you. All right, back with Ross discussing the cybersecurity ecosystem. We're going to shift a little bit now from what we were talking about in the previous discussion, more to the vendor ecosystem as types of companies. And we've seen a wide variety here. Product-led growth gets a lot of gets talked about a lot in the industry now, versus the kind of traditional outbound sales and marketing model. So a lot of very interesting stuff going on. There's bootstrap companies, VC funded companies. We've seen even a few crowdfunded companies. A lot of like consumer level, prosumer level, little hardware devices and things like that on Kickstarter. That's been interesting. But yeah, the vast majority when we're talking enterprise is going to be bootstrapped or VC funded. And Jason, in the first segment, you're talking about the pain of finding the unicorn, the cyber unicorn, perfect company, and then they get acquired by somebody who has a reputation for killing the product, or just making it horrible. So yeah, so where do we start here? Do you see any clear? Maybe we talk a bit about pros and cons of these different kinds of companies. And where I really want to go with this is the difference as a buyer in where your expectation should be, buying from somebody who's really early stage to maybe mid stage to maybe, a public company, that's well established. Yeah. So let's I'll choose. So let's principally talk about the Yeah, I actually gave a talk at RSA back in 2016 that was kind of a roadmap. You know, like one of the things with an early stage startup is you have a lot of input into the roadmap, and you know, lot more. You're heard a lot more when you're, you know, buyer number 5 than when you're buyer number 5,000, right? You know, so you have a lot more opportunity to guide the product, but obviously the product isn't going to be fully baked at that point. You know, so you know, maybe let's talk a little bit about the trade-offs there.
Yeah, I'm super happy to share my perspective to just kick this off. Yeah, definitely. What you mentioned is exactly how I see it as well. When a security leader is considering to work with an early stage pre-seed seed stage startup, there are several things that they usually have to keep in mind. One is that they get to talk to founders, and founders do everything. Like, founders are the ones who build the product. Founders handle support, they handle sales, they handle literally like everything the company needs. And so there are definitely many advantages to that. You get an opportunity to influence the roadmap. You get an opportunity to get the startup to prioritize some of the areas and features that your company may specifically find useful. But at the same time, it comes at a cost, and the cost is not insignificant. Early stage startups tend to have like less mature and less developed products, meaning they often have some bugs and gaps, and potentially even reliability and latency challenges. uh, they may they may require like some basic support, understanding specific problems and understanding how a certain feature is expected to work. They may have no knowledge or no expertise internally whatsoever, so they would be reaching out to the security team, asking for input, asking for feedback, which is obviously great because you get to shape the product in a direction in which it makes sense. But it's also costly because your people are now involved in essentially like doing the customer discovery and feedback sessions, instead of focusing on just implementing the tool and getting the most value out of it. There are trade-offs, and at the same time, the story flips almost 100% the moment the company becomes large and mature. Like, if you're looking at the mature vendor, the support isn't there. Like, it takes
Mhm.
much longer to get to get the team to listen. It it becomes hard or sometimes even impossible to get the team to prioritize different features on the roadmap, or even to consider, let alone to prioritize different product capabilities. Like, once you are a customer number, 5 or 10,000, you're just one out of many, and you also don't have the same bargaining power to negotiate price. Like, the price is now set. It's either you take it or leave it. While at an early stage, at the pre-seed seed stage startup, like, you can often use the product for free, as long as you are there early and as long as you're willing to do the work that it takes to actually adopt an early stage solution. At the same time, later stage companies tend to be much more robust, tend to have much more mature processes, tend to have much more mature products. So you're not going to have your products just stop working at 2 a.m. at night, but it also comes at a cost. A higher price, uh, less responsiveness, like fewer ability, like lesser ability to influence the roadmap, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and Ross, we were talking in the previous segment. I had mentioned I look forward to talking about some of the pressures on cybersecurity teams and companies. Right, one of the biggest challenges with working with a startup is their ability to meet vendor risk obligations.
Yeah.
Right, so many times I've had new companies come and pitch their platform, pitch their software, pitch their solution, and then you run them through vendor risk, and they can't pass the first phase.
Yeah.
So the maturity, like you had mentioned, on the process side, the regulatory side, making sure they're meeting those compliance obligations, and many times that's a roadblock for them. And they couldn't pass that first phase of vendor risk. And the pressures on us as CISOs and as business professionals is, number one, any type of regulatory framework that you need to adhere to requires that you have a vendor risk management program. Insurance companies are now starting to require that you have a vendor risk management program for me to get cyber liability insurance, right? So it's those continuous pressures from a compliance and a legal standpoint that kind of straps us a little bit in the ability to do business with those companies. And then you have the other side where One day the CEO walks in the room and says, I heard of this great new company. Go do a proof of concept because my buddy's on the board. Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you go through this proof of concept and say, wow, this is a pretty good tool. Then they fail on vendor risk and you can't bring them on board. Right. So those are all those dynamics that are happening within the C level and within the organization and with legal team and risk teams that you have to play through with a lot of these new companies.
And that's now a product category, Jason, that I've seen
Yeah.
are companies that help early stage vendors like do that stuff earlier in their
Mhm.
journey and help out with that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've seen that a lot as a roadblock, as friction to being able to do business. So, if that maturity can come quicker while still being agile and be able to provide the support and the enhancement cycles that that security leaders are looking for, that's a golden nugget right there. Be able to pass vendor risk and still be able to stay agile.
So, question for you, Russ. What do you think about the whole community support thing? Because I've noticed sometimes it's early in a vendor's life, and sometimes it's later on. They'll have forums. They'll basically have customers helping customers. Like Tynes is one example I can think of where there's this whole ecosystem of people sharing stuff. Even with some of the early SOAR tools, like I remember, Phantom and what was the other big competitor? To them that Demisto,
Mm.
open sourced all their different SOAR playbooks and things like that. You could go check them out. People could contribute to them. Um, it almost seems like it's part of the marketing program, right?
The way I think about it, every single startup dreams about the ability to get everybody in the community to one, refer new customers to them and evangelize about what the company is solving, but also two, do the support and do the marketing and do the sales for them. I guess the reality is that the vast majority of cybersecurity startups are simply not able to make it work. Like every company would like to have a community support
Yeah.
channel where somebody else answers customer questions or prospects questions. Somebody else is referring the new leads and new prospects into their funnel. But the reality is it's actually quite hard to make it happen, and you see it a lot with open source specifically. I have seen a number of companies starting by either offering open source solutions or building some open source version on the side, only to close source it or shut the whole initiative down because of the amount of costs it requires.
Mhm.
Like now, in the example with Tynes, I think Tynes is one of the very few companies that was able to pull it off and build a community around their product, but it's taken them a very long time to do it. If you attend any of the security events, like whether it's Blue Team Con or B-Sides, you see just how active the Tynes team is. You see how involved they stay, how creative they're trying to become with their marketing that is not aggressive, that is focused
Yeah.
on practitioners, focused on adding value. Like they've got Tynes Labs, which is sort of the part of the company that builds out different playbooks and engages with the community on the day to day. So there is a lot of investment that startups need to make if they're even thinking about building the community around their company. But more importantly, not every startup is going to be able to do it to begin with. If a startup is targeting security practitioners, security engineers, security architects, people doing the work on the ground, then it is much more likely that it will be able to engage those people in the community than a startup that is selling direct to CISOs. Like CISOs don't have the time to sit in a Slack channel and help one another with questions that have to do with product implementation. So the persona does matter quite a
Mhm.
bit.
Is that a recipe for success? Because I had mentioned it earlier on in the program that in many times when we're looking for a solution, I'd go have the team go out there and do the bake off, right? Do that proof of value, or bring those technologies to the table and really take a look at them. Is that the recipe for success? Is really target the practitioners because they're going to have that influence upstream to someone like myself who has the purse strings.
It depends. Like if you continue down this path, then we will end up in this PLG land where we're talking whether or not. I think so. I think what is true is that individual contributors in cybersecurity have a fairly large ability to influence buying decisions, and there are many reasons for that. The most basic is that cybersecurity teams tend to be smaller compared to their engineering or business counterparts, and because they're smaller, it means that a mid-level security engineer or a mid-level analyst could be doing due diligence on a
Mhm.
several $100,000 contract.
Mhm.
From that perspective, yes, it definitely makes sense to find a way to engage security practitioners. That said, there are tools that are more likely to be successful with it, and there are tools that are less likely to be successful with it. And also, doing so and trying to target practitioners does come at a cost. It means, like, if you are a company that is trying to engage a security practitioner, it means you will need to find a way to build either a community version of the product or an open source version of the product where practitioners can access that tool. You need to invest into making your API documentation accessible and easy to navigate and robust and so on and so forth. So it could be one of the ways to succeed.
Mhm.
But even when startups are trying to target security practitioners, it's important to build that sales enablement so that the practitioner doesn't just look at the tool and says, yeah, this looks cool to me, but they're empowered and they have all the right collateral and all the right sales enablement to go to their security leaders and say, hey, I've evaluated this from the technical standpoint, it works as intended, and here are some of the arguments for you to consider it from the business standpoint.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because at the end of the day, I would want to make sure that as a tool that the team supports and trusts and can operate within, but also come to me with the knowledge and background on it for me to do my own vetting as a leader because ultimately, signing that paperwork, signing that contract, my name's going to be on that, my reputation's going to be on that. Not only with the CFO and the CEO, but also with our clients that we have to support and in the reputation that that company would bring serving us, right? So I wouldn't want that to be our our downfall, because we all know what happens when you bring in third parties. They add risk, right? So we need to do that level of risk analysis against the organization. So yeah, I think that's great. Hit it at multiple levels, right? Start building the relationship with the practitioner, but make sure you're empowered to be able to do the enablement at every single level of an organization. So that way, when you're asked the questions, the answers are there.
So let's jump over to the other end of this thing, talking about onboarding vendors and finding the right one. Uh, uh, let's flip over to what happens when you pick the wrong one, right? Or you come into an organization and there's I'm sure this happens to 100% of CISOs where there's already some tools, contracts already been signed. It wasn't the right choice, and you gotta work with it, you gotta work around it. But I mentioned that 2016 RSA talk that I gave about adopting vendors, and one of the recommendations I gave, I don't know how it holds up today, but I said plan to ditch before you hitch was the recommendation. So kind of like change control, having a backup plan.
Yep.
Like if things don't work out, make sure you know how you're gonna, what your options are. Are you choosing the 3-year deal or the 1-year deal? All the things that go into these
Mhm.
kinds of decisions. Or if you adopt this tool, like how hard is it gonna be to rip and replace it? How central is it gonna, like if you're choosing a new IDP, like that tends to, some products are easier to rip and replace than others.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, Adrian. It's as a new CISO coming on board, you spend a good amount of time up front doing analysis and diligence against everything that's happening within the existing program. You're not changing things right out of the gate, right? You're taking a look at what's happening and you're designing a maturity strategy, right? And a tool or a platform not fitting could be multiple reasons why. You as a CISO could look at it and say, you want to know what? I know there are a lot more mature platforms out there, but you also have to say, is this the hill I want to die on? Right? Because it may be a tool that the team's adopted and they love and they want to continue on. And you're going to have to weigh the fact that maybe we have to stay with this team and figure out how we can make it a fit. Or you could walk in the door and the team says, this is not a fit. We hate this platform. We can't stand this tool. Then as a CISO, you need to figure out why. Right? Is it because they haven't adopted it? Have they not been trained? Have we not invested time in this? Or is it truly there's a better product? So that's a very, very deep conversation that takes a lot of time to get through. If you're walking in the door as a new CISO and you're getting a hint of a certain platform or program not fitting the environment, not fitting your company, right? It could be a cost cutting measure. You could get pressure from the CEO who says, "You want to know what? We spent way too much money on the security team. I need you to figure out where to cut." Do
Yeah.
tools go first? What goes first, right? So there's a lot there, and you have to do the true deep dive, hard diligence to figure out the why first before you start making plans. It takes time.
Yeah, and then the flip side of the flip side is I've seen a lot of cases. Maybe people don't understand that this happens, but where vendors have to fire their customers. So
Oh,
maybe
absolutely,
Ross,
absolutely.
Ross, I don't know
100%. I
if you
mean,
have any.
just coming from the services side of the aisle, right? Not a product
Right.
side, but the services side of the aisle. It's sad to say there have been instances where the risk to our organization is too high for decisions that the client is making or not making, right? It may be decisions that they are not making that at the end of it, we don't want our brand and our name on that poor decision if something were to happen. And, I don't like calling it firing a customer because at some point we may have a relationship again down the road. But at that point in time, it's that amicable decision that we're no longer aligned in the outcomes that need to happen. And we're gonna separate ways for now. So it's, firing a customer is strong, but I think realizing that it's no longer a fit in the relationship is something that definitely happens, especially on the services side. If you're looking out for the best interest of the client and they're not making the best decisions.
I do genuinely believe that more product startups should be firing customers. That said, I'm also recognizing that there is a bit of a desperation on the startup side, and what you
We're
see a
just going to
lot.
clip that by itself with no context.
Yeah.
No, so what I see a lot is that uh some, or especially at the early stage, like early stage startups are trying different ideas, right? They may not have a product market fit from day one, so they're signing contracts, they're trying to get some new logos, they're trying to get somebody who is going to believe in their vision. But the vision evolves and it changes, and it can happen that like 9 months after the company has started, it is going in an entirely different direction. Like the vision has changed, the product has changed, and yet the vast majority of the founders are hesitant to have a transparent conversation with the customers that they've signed before that point, before they either pivoted or evolved their direction, for many reasons. Like they want to have that testimonial on their website, they want to have a logo that they can mention when talking to their VCs. And that's why I think that more founders should have that strength and the decisiveness to fire
Yeah.
their customers. But also because the vast majority of cybersecurity startups have not been growing in the way that their investors and the market expect,
Yeah.
they're afraid to sacrifice that revenue for the bigger goals and for broader visions, because they know that those goals may never come true.
So Russ, are you saying that in many instances, a startup level company will keep features and functionality and aspects of their platform alive to retain a logo?
At least at the early stage, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Those are tough decisions.
Yeah. Well, again, like you said, you're weighing revenue against maintaining that legacy feature set, right?
Yeah, and it's not so much the revenue, it's also just the customer.
Sure.
And like in cybersecurity, where every purchasing decision is based on trust, it's so critical to have that testimonial. It's so critical to have a
Mhm.
CISO who is willing to talk to their friends, or to just offer a great referral, or just say a couple of good words among their CISO communities on Slack, on WhatsApp, and
Mhm.
wherever else people spend their time.
Yeah, I remember talking to QRadar once, some folks there, and I was like, "What is this risk manager product that you've got? Like, I've never heard of anybody using this." And they're like, "Yeah, we built this for this one Fortune 100 company, and they're the only ones who have ever bought it."
But we have their logo on our client section of the site.
Yeah. All right, as we wrap up here, let's talk a little bit about who should buyers turn to for advice on buying products. You know, this is something I tried to build, and I may try again to build some kind of product reviews, cybersecurity product reviews in the space to help folks make these decisions. But yeah, with what we've got now, you know, is it analysts? Is it peers? Yeah, where are you seeing people having success in finding good products to use, Ross?
Oh, I
And then
would
maybe
find the
Jason, and then
right.
we can close it out.
Well, I
I
mean, at the end of the day, you know, I think the best place to get product recommendations is relationships that you have, right? Your community. Honestly, that's always been the best place to go, because you can have deep conversations. You have those relationships already with those folks. You have that trust factor where you can talk candidly about the pros and the cons and the risks and where things haven't gone well. I think that's the most powerful place to get recommendations, because outside of that, everybody else is owned by some higher power in one way, shape. You know, the analysts are owned by a higher power. The product companies are owned by owned by a higher power. So at the end of it, I think the relationships matter the most. What I said earlier, though, about influence from CEO, board members, things of that nature, sometimes those recommendations fly in there, and outside of doing a solid to your CEO or your board member, a lot of times those don't pan out because it's I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy, right? So, and you're not truly getting that trust factor and that candidness. So, community all the way, relationships in your network all the way. I think those are the best places to be able to get that feedback.
But then we do have that trend where, you know, folks will recommend stuff and later on you find out they've never used it, but they're like an angel investor in you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
they're both
agreed, and that's why it's good to have that core set of folks within your network. You know, I've always called it my personal board of directors, where I have
there.
folks
I
who
love
can, you
that.
know what I mean. I always have that personal board of directors around me who I can go to that I trust, that I know are going to be candid, and if they were an angel investor, they'd let me know, right? So again, it's the trust factor.
yeah, I
Then
think
Ross, for you, maybe that's more of a like where do you get your best quality leads from? You know, where you're least likely to have to fire a customer.
No, I think at the end of the day, everybody everybody has different incentives. Like every single party, like be it analysts, be it security leaders, like startup founders, angel investors, VCs, like everyone is driven by some incentives. And what's important is understanding what those incentives are. Like you could be talking to a security leader who is who is an advisor to a competitive startup. You could
Mhm.
be talking to a VC that has invested in your friend's company. You could be talking uh, to somebody else. You could be talking to an analyst that for some reason is very passionate about a specific customer segment and does not at all, or a specific problem segment, and does not at all believe in some other tool or a market category. So I think what's important is understanding those incentives and asking people transparently to disclose the incentives that drive their decision making and drive the suggestions and recommendations they're making. Like us, and then us as a rational human being, when you know what's at stake, when you know what's at play, when you know who is driven by what kind of incentives, you can then do your own analysis and make your own decision. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which of your friends has recommended something. You have to be the one making your own decision.
Great advice. And Ross, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly today. It's been great having you.
Likewise, thank you so much for the invite. It's been a pleasure, Adrian and Jason.
And the book is Cyber for Builders. And though it is written towards founders, written towards folks building cybersecurity products, I still think it's really useful for buyers in understanding that landscape, understanding how they look at the industry. I think there's a lot of good stuff you can take away from it there, and still very useful to buyers in that regard. Also, Jason, thanks for joining me today.
Anytime, Adrian. Great to have you on.
And thanks to everyone watching or listening this week's episode of Business Security Weekly. We're going to wrap up now and go see if we can see the eclipse from where we're at.